In this video, I'm going to break down a general Ferrous Rokiric deck focused on lots of multicolored spells and big golems. Oh if you take out the good Boros cards, this is just a budget deck. That's right, I made a budget deck. Mostly on accident. While this deck does have good cards in it, some of the big Boros staples like Smothering Tithe, Esper Sentinel, and Fourth Orlingus, I think is how you pronounce it. It ended up making up like 99% of the deck's budget, so I figured I may as well lean into it and just go budget all the way. Without further ado, let's get into what I call Golem Get Ye Gone. General Ferrous Rokiric, or as I like to call him, GFR, is a 3-mana creature. For a generic 1 white and 1 red, you get a legendary human soldier that's 3/1. It has hexproof from Monocolored, and whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 4/4 red and white golem artifact creature token. Now a quick point, the tokens you make are red and white, so we get to take advantage of certain Boros cards that affect the red and or white cards. I was drawn to GFR because I have a thing for gold spells. It's why I also have a Kethis legendary type deck. Back when I was but a lad, and this is before things like mana curves and putting enough lands in your deck, I was known as Legend Boy. The group game deck that I had preferred was mostly Legends, and I was only able to really feature Legends from the Chronicles expansion. I had a few dual lands, a Felwar Stone, and a bunch of terrible Legends. I also ran a bunch of gold cards like Dark Heart of the Wood and Marsh Goblins, because I assumed all gold cards were Legends. Now flash forward to today, and I still don't really have a good grasp on game mechanics. Anyways, a lot of times if I have extra slots, or if I'm in the initial stages of deck building, I lean toward gold cards, so GFR seemed like an eventuality for me. I use the sketch variant of the card mostly because I think the art direction flavor text is just so weird to show up on a Magic card. Now as I mentioned before, this deck will focus on lots of multicolored spells, and pumping up your golems. It will primarily win through the combat step, with a never-ending supply of 4/4 red and white golems. There's also probably an equipment-based version of this deck, but I've never really been an equipment guy. Also, a lot of the funnest equipments are really expensive, so that eliminates the budget possibility. Before we get to the deck list, I want to break down my parameters for what constitutes a budget deck. Number 1. The limit is $40. This does not count shipping or tax or basic lands. I will, however, give it a $2 buffer either way, just in case there's a weird spike between building the deck and the video production. Number 2. I may have an expensive version of the card in the deck or shown in the video, but the total is based off the cheapest version I can buy at the time of video production. Number 3. I'll be using TCG Player and their card optimizer. I'll be settling for literally any card, heavy play, damage, doesn't matter. Now throughout the video, this symbol will pop up with some cards. This is to denote that these cards could be substituted into the deck for any of the cards in that section. At the end of the video, I'll give some ideas for upgrades you could do to the deck if you want to spend a little bit of cash on it. Okay, enough rambling, let's get to the deck. We start with the Golem-centric cards with the Splicer set, Censor, Master, Blade, and Darksteel. Each of these will provide a different buff to golems, but will also create golems. Though these golems are the 3/3 artifact colorless type of golem, not our beefy 4/4 red and white golems. Intangible Virtue, Tempered Steel, and Roar of Resistance are enchantments that will provide your golems with abilities and buffs. Take note on Roar of Resistance. You do not have to be the attacking player to use the ability and pump the creatures. If another player is attacking another player, this is a good political piece. Steel Overseer, Arcbound Shikari, and Brown's Guardian get your golems bigger and provide them with some protections. Alabu, Ancient Witness, and Nepali Sun's Vanguard both provide your golems with an ability, but also provide some extra effects when your golems attack. This group makes up the bulk of the multicolored cards to get the golems going. There's no particular theme here, just Boros cards that I've wanted to play or they seem interesting. Master Warcraft lets you control an entire attack phase. Gleam of Battle provides another way to get your golems to grow. Venerable Warsinger gives you some recursion, while Jor-Kadeen the Prevailer provides a huge attack bonus most of the time. Blade Historian provides a very scary double strike for all your attackers. While Balefire Liege gives all your golems and Boros creatures a whopping +2/+2 and adds a Lightning Helix type effect to all your Boros spells. Tori Davenant Fury Rider provides a buff and utility to your attacking creatures, while Legion's Initiative provides a buff but also some protection for your non-token creatures. Boros Charm and Deflecting Palm both provide some protection as well as some dome damage. Response Resurgence is a good tool for both offense and defense. Rim Corollas Stalwart Slayer is a nice little beater that buffs your helixes and saves you a life here and there. Moonhold is a solid way to semi-control a turn, and Double Cleave is, it's a cheap multicolored instant, but a surprise instance of Double Strike can be very powerful. Figure of Destiny is the deck's only 1 mana value Boros colored card, which makes it ideal for being the second spell of the turn to get multiple golems that turn. Aurelia the War Leader can knock a player out with a surprise second golem rush. Shadowfax Lord of Horses is a good way to cheat out one of your mini golem enhancers, the Splicers, Blade Historian, etc. And the last card of this section, Velomachus Lorehold. That's right folks, it's the return of the Mac. You know that he'll be back. Really, any of your favorite Boros cards can fit into this slot. I've just had this full art version hanging around doing nothing, and I wanted a big splashy effect. Plus I really wanted to make a Mark Morrison reference. We need to keep a steady flow of card draw to keep a steady flow of golems coming. Idol of Oblivion will get you a card for a golem. Rumor Gatherer can often trigger off of one creature card, the Scribe for the Boros colored creature card, and then the draw for the resulting golem. Symmetry Matrix gives you a potential card draw for each time you get a golem, for the meager cost of 1 generic mana. Tokasia's Welcome will give you a card for a golem. Using your Boros instance on your opponent's turns means you'll get multiple triggers of this effect. Luciel Clockwork Scholar provides some golem combat protection, but more importantly, a card per golem per turn. Tome of the Guild Pact will get you a card per multicolored spell cast, and can provide some mid-game mana. Showdown of the Scalds and Thrilling Discovery are the most traditional card draw of the bunch. Cast a spell and get a bunch of cards. The Mana Rig can be mana ramp, kind of, but it's mostly there for card draw. While Sunforger will let you cast your cards directly from your deck, there's no specific Sunforge plan, it's just really good with cheap Boros spells. We round out the Sculpting with Mary, Esquire of Rohan, who really wants to get into combat alongside any of your other legendary creatures, and Nahiri the Harbinger, who is mostly there just to discard and draw, but can sometimes also snipe some tap stuff. We start with Lightning Helix and Lightning Helix's little more annoying brother, Sacred Fire. It's cheap, golem generating interaction. Ride Down and Rip Apart are more of the same, cheap, impactful, and make a golem. Same goes for Intimidation Bolt and Justice Strike. Nothing special, cheap, makes a golem. You get it, right? Eowyn Fearless Knight and Durgar Hedgemage are creatures that have some sort of removal on them, be it creature or enchantment and artifact. Generous Gift makes up the only monocolored interaction, mostly because it can hit anything. Wear and Tear is good, but you'll want to try to cast them fused. If you cast just one side or the other, it doesn't really count as a multicolored spell. Of course, there are times when you'll want or need to use just one side, and that's fine. Just know how the card interacts with GFR. This is the mystery section of the video, where I ask you to like the video. Not really, but if you are enjoying it or if it's helping you out, I would appreciate if you moved your mouse cursor over to the thumbs up button and click it once and only once. But for real, I have one card slot that doesn't really fit into any section. I wanted to run a Swiftfoot Boots as a way to give GFR some specific protection, but I think actually Guildscorn Ward is a better and more thematic GFR protection. So, congratulations Guildscorn Ward, you are the first ever card to get your own section. I run 3 wipes that are not necessarily always wipes, but they're mostly wipes. Fight to the Death can really mess people up if they rely on blocking and damage prevention or some sort of protection from type thing. Hour of Reckoning is a good way to potentially clear the board, but keep your golems ready to fight. Taunt from the Rampart just seems fun and a great way to instigate, as well as a way to get through for lethal. I run 7 ramp, including Felwar Stone, Boros Signet, Wayfarer's Bauble, Mindstone, Talisman of Conviction, and Obsidian Obelisk. The 7th ramp was gonna be Arcane Signet because that's pretty cheap now. But funk that card, man, seriously. Liquimetal Torque gets the nod, as its second ability can actually make some of your non-artifact creatures artifact creatures, and we have a lot of cards that buff artifact creatures. Much more interesting and skill testing than Arcane Signet, I think anyways. Slayer's Stronghold, Sunhome Fortress of the Legion, and Castle Embereth can all help out your attacking creatures. Guildmage's Form lets you get counters on your multicolored creatures, and Path of Ancestry actually has a bit of usefulness here. The deck runs a decent amount of humans and or soldiers. X-Guard Armory is almost there exclusively for Sunforger and Guildscorn Ward. If you don't end up running any of those, you can probably cut this as well. With any budget deck, our mana situation is not super great. I run 6 Boros producing lands, including Boros Garrison, Temple of Triumph, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Fury Calm Snarl, and Battlefield Forge. I then run 11 mountains and 13 plains. Okay, now we're going to take a look and see if it actually fits the budget we have here. So you can see I've got my deck here in Moxfield. If you look down here, you can see that it's usually a little bit more inflated than what you can actually find on TCG Player. So we've got our deck complete here. We're going to go to Buy Deck right up here towards the top. We're going to go TCG Player. Let's remove set codes and do not purchase cards from your collection. We're going to unclick that because we want to get a total of the whole deck. Okay, so it's still estimating at 48.95, so let's go ahead and pop that open. All right, so let's hit edit items first because we need to remove a couple things. Mountain, plains. Remember, plains basic lands are not part of the overall cost. And one thing that does happen, yeah, here we go. Aelwyn has this little accent above her first letter, so we're going to change that. All right, I think we are good. So let's go ahead and hit add to cart. We'll see what the first balance is. $70, not great. So we're going to go to optimize. We're going to keep current printings. No, none of this matters. And I think, yeah, here. So let's go any condition and optimize. So now we should see a couple different carts eventually. Usually full decks take a minute or so to populate. Seeing that initial of $70 is always a shock because most of that's, oh, look. Yeah, most of that TCG Direct. So look, we got one here from verified sellers at $35. Again, no shipping, no tax. So let's go ahead and select that cart. Yeah, nothing in the saved for later. And we've got a total of $35.76. So you've even got a couple extra bucks. If you want to look into the next section and see all the upgrades, you could probably find something for about $5, maybe a couple bucks, and then even add it and still stick under the $40 limit. Now you have a wide variety of potential upgrades. I would probably start with the mana base as that's your best bang for your buck. Your upgrades here range about $5 for something like Sundown Pass, all the way up to, well, a lot. For more hand sculpting, you can get Esper Sentinel, Benny Brack, Stoneforge Mystic, or Archivist of Ligma. If you go the Stoneforge route, you can also put in a bunch of fun, expensive equipment. If you want more powerful ramp, you can look into Smothering Tithe, Dockside Extortionist, Deep Gnome Terramancer, and Relic of Legends. If you add a Relic of Legends, you may want to work in a few more legendary creatures just to make sure you have enough in your deck to make this actually better than a Command Sphere. As I mentioned before, you can really put any Boros Good Stuff cards in here. You may want to look into a Kiri Lineslinger, Aroas God of Victory, Waves of Aggression, or Winota Joiner of Forces. This deck wants a GFR out and you casting lots of multicolored spells. Early game, try to land a draw engine like Tokasia's Welcome or Tome of the Guild Pact. Mid-game, you're going to be setting up your buffs via creatures or enchantments. You'll still be getting golems here, but mostly as a side effect. Use these as pieces to your plan. Late game, you should have golems with Double Strike, Haste, Vigilance, Ward, whatever. If you can't finish off someone with all that, then I don't know what to tell you. Now this deck is pretty weak to board wipes as well as pillow forts. I run a good amount of artifact and enchantment removal, but if you don't have it at the right time, you can just be shut down. If you're particularly concerned about getting wiped, you can run something like Unbreakable Formation or probably even Gerard Weatherlight Hero. And that's my first take on a budget deck. I hope this helped you, and if it did and you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. I make videos like this all the time. If you aren't into big giant golems, try this EDH deck video about small fleshy hobbits, or this other video that YouTube is going to suggest via the algorithm. Algorithms, they're never wrong. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you around.